NFL Nightly. This is the game day recap edition. Right now, I'm joined by Josh Reed, Carl Jones. I'm Thad Brown. Caleb Carr, Rachel Liebert will join us a little later on in the show. The Bills escape 31-21 in a game that was a heck of a lot closer than most people thought. I did predict a 10-point win, but we'll not talk about that too much. End of this game, guys, it kind of came down more or less to a Terrell Bernard interception set up by a Deion Walker pressure/deflection that helped out. This defense, after getting really lit up on third down and on big spots late in this game, they, at the end of the day, made the play that mattered.
Let's start off with this. Why are we doing these so late every time? I mean, holy cow. Every time there's home games, we're out here. It's 3 a.m. and we're taping these. No, but you bring up a good point. Deion Walker's length was a huge problem for Tua on that last throw. Deion is 7 foot 14 inches tall. I mean, the guy, and he had his arms outstretched. There is no way that he could see a receiver and just, I think, threw it in the direction of a wideout that he thought would be open. And TB's standing right there and makes the big play. To your point, though, third downs, they were an issue. Coming off of a Jets game when they held them 0 for 11 on third downs, it's something that they're going to need to clean up.
I want to go back to TB for a second here. I remember when Von Miller signed here, they wanted to call him the closer, like a guy off the edge that can get the quarterback down when you need it most. TB has kind of thrown his hat into the ring of being a closer in his own right in several plays that he's made during his time here as the captain of the Buffalo Bills defense. Time and time again, we're like, hey, their backs are against the wall. They're not looking great. They're getting punched up and down the field, and he finds a way to make that play to help them seal the win. Really impressive performance by 8 tonight.
It reminds me a little bit of what Matt Milano used to be. Mm-hmm. Matt Milano used to be that guy that it seemed like the ball would always kind of find him in crunch time, and it looks like it's TB now.
Two things that I want to talk to you about those two guys. First, Deion Walker said in the locker room afterward that he had missed an assignment earlier. To turn around and make that play was a big deal, and for someone to do that in Game 3, I'm pretty impressed. With Bernard being the captain and making that play makes a difference. Trey White kind of talked about that. Look, when you're the captain, you look in guys' eyes and say, follow me. Well, you got to make some plays to get people on board with that, and boy, he made a big one in this game tonight. Offensively, it was great for a half. In fact, me and Scott Swinson, WIVB photographer, were playing a game in the first half about how many plays it would take the Bills to score a touchdown because it felt like it was that easy. That game went away at halftime. Third quarter, the Dolphins really took a lot of things away, and now, you know, you and I had a little debate in there in the media room about, is there a legit reason to be concerned about this Bills offense?
I don't think so. I just don't. They still scored 31 points. I get it. The problem is we're not used to seeing them punt more than one time in a row. All of a sudden it's 2 punts in a row. Then it's 3 punts in a row. They may have gotten up to 4 punts in a row at some point. It was definitely 3. So I know they started spinning their tires a little bit there. But at the end of the day, if Josh Allen, the offense, is the biggest concern this team has, we're going to be covering a team in the Super Bowl.
I'm going to go second, and then Carl can kind of referee this debate. The concern I have is that, and this was in the Ravens game too, when you take the run away from this offense, it becomes the Save Us Josh offense because there's just not that much talent on the outside to really win reps over and over. And as good as this offense is, I do wonder when games matter in January, if a team like the Dolphins can take that away and cause you a problem for a quarter and a half, what are you going to do? I mean, look, that Ravens game was awesome. That was a 1 in 100 shot. If you keep playing it that way, you're going to lose way more of those than you win. And seeing it in this game against this defense that we think is bad, that bothers me even in the context of they got 30 again.
15 seconds, back to me again. Yeah. so 15 seconds. Look, Khalil Shakir is coming off the ankle thing, so you wonder how kind of ramped up he is right now. Obviously, he had the big touchdown late in the game. Keep in mind, Josh Palmer's new to this offense. Elijah Moore's new to this offense. Keon Coleman, just at the beginning of his second season. I do believe this offense will look a lot more polished as the season goes on.
Put me in the game, Coach. Let's go.
Attack. You're in.
I will say, and I'm going to play Switzerland here, I think it's somewhere in the middle based off of the standard that we're going to have for this offense. I think there are maybe 28 other offenses in the league where if they saw that tonight, they are excited. But when you think about this Bills team and who the teams are going to play in the postseason, they're going to go up against Steve Spagnuolo and the Chiefs. They're going to play that Ravens team, presumably again in the postseason. If they play the Bengals, well, that's a whole different problem because the Bengals, I think, will be much worse than what we saw tonight defensively. But I understand those lulls can't happen against Patrick Mahomes because he is going to put up 30. Those lulls can't happen against Lamar Jackson because we've seen time and time again he's going to walk him down the field on this Ravens team. So I get it, but tonight for September 18th, this was a good performance in my eyes.
And there's a number of things you look at, whether it's this offense or whatever, where it's week 3. The Dolphins defense might be way better than we think. To where, hey, that in 4 or 5 weeks, this performance doesn't look nearly as jarring. The one conclusion that I'll make, and kind of the finish to my point, the closing statement, if you will.
It's your show.
Right, exactly.
It's your show, so you get this for sure.
The way that the run game, when you take that away, there's a blueprint now to slowing the Bills down. If you can take James Cook out of the game, which is not easily done, and the Dolphins couldn't do it for the rest of the game because the last touchdown drive was very run heavy, the offense grinds right to a halt. And it's not that they got him in this game, it's that the Ravens did the same thing, and we know what the blueprint is to slow this Bills offense down. You good?
Yeah, okay. I'm good with that.
All right. With that offense, and you brought this up, Carl, and you can go first for this one too, since you're just standing there most of the time. The tight ends in this offense, with Jackson Hawes, it really feels like that room has an entirely new dimension, and it's, I think, made everybody better.
It's so complete. I know we talked about in the offseason how the receivers kind of fit like a puzzle, and you got your above-the-rim guy, the guy who can stretch the field. The tight ends they feel similar to that, where you have your receiving threat in a Dalton Kincaid. Dawson Knox, who is probably adequate in a little bit of everything, and then Jackson Hawes. I don't want to be disrespectful here because my man made a good catch in week 1, had a hell of a play today, too, in the end zone. But he's best when he puts his paws on you and moves you from point A to point B. Even Reggie Gilliam makes some good plays in the run game as well. They fit like a puzzle, and they add to this run game that's already dynamic with one of the best offensive lines in football. When that team and those 3 guys are cooking, there's not many defenses that can stop them, no matter what you put out there.
Remember Alec Anderson eligible, right? They'd get inside the 5-yard line, and you guaranteed that Alec Anderson was coming on the field and he was going to be eligible, and that's what they were going to. And now it's Jackson Hawes, and they have a guy who can actually go out in pass patterns and make plays. And I talked to him, after the game about making his first ever NFL touchdown catch, and I had him walk me through the play a little bit, and he was like, look, I saw Josh roll on, I just wanted to make myself available. And I said, was there any point where you're like, oh, he's not going to throw it to me? He said, no. I've already learned early on in my career through practice that with Josh Allen, you always better be ready to catch the ball because it could come at any point from any angle. And then I followed that up with, but James Cook, like the big reason you're on the field is to help get the run game going. What's it like when James Cook gets going, and how much does that validate you? And he said, a lot, because I have him on my fantasy football team as well. And I know a lot of people that have him on their fantasy team, they're probably winning a lot of games early on.
That's a smart pick. He's going to have a nice career in fantasy football analysis after he's done with the NFL. To your point, Carl, about how the room fits, it kind of feels to me like you have like what the Packers have done with Micah Parsons. You had a good pass rush, but you bring that guy in, now the best pass rusher that really wasn't a number 1 can be a number 2. He feels better. 2 becomes 3 all the way down. It's not quite the same thing, but when you have Jackson Hawes, who can do all those blocking things, now Dalton Kincaid can concentrate on being a receiver. Dawson Knox doesn't have to carry so much of the blocking freight, and it makes those guys a lot better.
We talked about this on our segment, Let's Talk Ball, earlier this week. You're not asking Dalton Kincaid to do anything that he's not good at anymore. We're not going to ever see, I hope at least, Dalton Kincaid block defensive ends and linebackers anymore. I think that is out of the playbook now that 85 is here. So that's where you're knocking guys down a pedestal and putting them and slotting them in the right roles. Similar to when you watch the Packers now, it's like, oh my lordy, Rashawn Gary's the 3rd best pass rusher here. Lord have mercy. So yeah, similar things with the Bills tight end room.
Real quick, you brought it up. James Cook continues to prove that he is worth every single dollar, and did it again tonight, even though, like we said before, there were periods where the run game wasn't as good.
I think we get caught up on the receivers when we're looking for dynamic playmakers on that side of the ball. It's James Cook. Outside of Josh Allen, obviously, but it's James Cook. He is the dynamic playmaker on this team. You feel like anytime he catches the ball and gets out in the open field or has the ball in his hands just on a run play, if he has a little bit of space, you feel like there's a chance he could take it to the house. And at one point, in Josh Allen's post-game press conference, he was asked about Cook and, of course, had a lot of praise for him and said there were a couple of times on the sideline where Cook, he was talking with James, and he said, there were 2 plays in particular where they both went that close to popping a big one. And back to our early point on the offense starting a little bit, well, one of those 2 pop, and maybe it's not a punt, maybe it's another touchdown, and maybe the offense, we come out of this with a little different feeling.
I'll say this. I know there's not a lot of juice at wide receiver, and every single time you play against Josh Allen, you're going to make sure your safeties are in the parking lot. Well, now it's kind of pick your poison now with Ford becoming a player who can make these 10, 15-yard gains each and every Sunday.
And he does it on his own a lot, too. There was a play tonight where he stepped out of a tackle at the line of scrimmage and turned out to get 15. I think it was a pitch play in the fourth quarter. This is not a guy that needs to necessarily have it blocked wide open for him. He can make the play all by himself.
He weighed about 190 pounds, and he break as many tackles as some of the big backs in the league. It's super impressive, I have to say.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the People's Postgame Court. That's Carl Jones. That's Josh Reed. We're going to take a break here on BKL Nightly. When we return, Caleb Carr and Rachel Liebert will join us for more talk on the Bills and the Dolphins. Stay with us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to BKL Nightly. I am Caleb Carr. That is Rachel Liebert. Hello, Rachel. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, Caleb. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So, as you can see, it's just the two of us. No Thad at this point. But we are going to provide you with a bunch of Bills coverage as we wrap up a big win over the Miami Dolphins. 31-21 Buffalo wins at home on Thursday Night Football. So, Rachel, I guess we'll start out. What are your initial impressions of this game?
My initial thoughts are that it should not have been a 10-point game, I think. But I'm glad they figured it out eventually and got the win. But I do think that this was a game that, I mean, a lot of people expected it to be a bigger, not a blowout, but just a bigger margin than it was. But, I think the offense figured it out a little bit, relying on the run game a little bit there, and then got it done. So not the greatest of performances, not the prettiest win, but it's a win, and Bills fans will take it.
Yep, they say every week go 1-0, and that's what they did. So it's hard to be upset about a win, but there were some ugly things about this game. Like you said, a lot of people expected it to be a blowout. I think my prediction earlier this week was like 41-17.
It was
not even close, very very far off. But it just kind of felt slow, and it felt like the defense couldn't really. It stood up when it needed to, and we'll get to the defense a little bit more later, but there were parts of that I was just it just didn't feel great. It didn't feel like a good win, but like you said, a win's a win, so we'll take him, we'll keep moving forward. But one thing that you did talk about that was impressive was the run game, in particular James Cook. He has been leaned on these past 2 weeks. He has been the guy to go to. 19 carries, 108 yards and a touchdown today. He had over 100 yards last week against the Jets. Obviously, Baltimore was its whole own thing, but he's really been leaned on these past few weeks. What have your impressions of him been so far, not only today, but really this whole season?
Yeah, I mean, just talking today, it was a day where Josh Allen wasn't, at least in my opinion, to the caliber that Josh Allen normally is. I mean, he did break some record and have 3 passing touchdowns. But I mean, it was an offense that wasn't using the air or getting down the field, I guess, in the air. So for me, James Cook was kind of that, relying on person, or however you want to word that, the person that was relied on. And I mean, it just shows that James Cook this offseason, obviously in the contract negotiations, James Cook wants to be in Buffalo, and there's a big reason why they kept James Cook in Buffalo. I think he is really the glue of this offense other than Josh Allen. But it really showed today, and I think just these first 3 games, that he's the one that is consistent to get the ball down the field when you rely on your run game or when you don't rely on your run game. James Cook is going to be there to move the ball down the field. And like I said, with a team that in an offense that did not have any crazy flashy plays today, James Cook was that constant, we need to get the ball down the field when it matters. And that's what he did today.
And that's a thing that every team, especially a Super Bowl contending team, needs to have. You look at like the Philadelphia Eagles, they lean on Saquon Barkley. They were still able last year to get the passing game going with their receivers if they needed to, but that was the guy that they leaned on. And a lot of great teams, Derrick Henry with the Baltimore Ravens, a lot of these great teams have a really good running back that they can lean on. And it was tough to say that about the Bills team the past few years, but this year it really looks like James Cook has stepped up and has really become that guy. He's explosive on the outside. He can break free. You saw what he did last week against the Jets, that 44-yard touchdown run. But this week there was a lot of up the middle, a lot of just ground and pound, just like run up the middle and get 5 or 6 yards. And he was able to do that. He was able to have strong legs and really help push that pile. So I thought that was really good from him. But You talked a little bit about how the air yards, the air game wasn't really there today. And I think that was kind of the game plan. Was both of these past 2 weeks was let's just lean on James Cook. Let's just we don't need Josh Allen to be Superman. I think there were points in this game where me, myself, and other fans were probably like, Josh Allen, can you be Superman? Please, please, just for a minute, just for a moment. We kind of need it. But it all turned out okay. James Cook has been great. But looking at those pass catchers, looking at the air yards, the guy that kind of led them today was Dalton Kincaid. 5 receptions, 66 yards. He had that first touchdown. I thought he had an excellent day. You look at a box score and you say, oh, he had 66 yards. That's a good day. That's a decent day for a tight end. I thought he did better than what that showed, though. I thought he had some great moves. That first touchdown, he caught it at like the 10-yard line, I think, made a man miss, fought through another guy, and then kind of just fought his way into the end zone. And it was a really good play. He had another couple plays, another good couple catches, a couple that he should have had, a couple that he didn't have. But Rachel, what are you seeing from Dalton Kincaid so far this season?
Especially today with Kincaid, I think he looked like a guy who was comfortable being a leader out there. And we've talked about, obviously, the everybody eats mentality, and it's a different person each game, it feels like. And that's kind of what the Bills have sold with this mentality, is that there isn't just a number one guy. But Kincaid today looked like, not that he is going to be that number one pass catcher, but he looked like a guy who is capable of being that, and we saw what he is capable of today. And we've seen it last year. We saw it a little bit in the first 2 games, but I think today really just cemented the fact that he is capable of just not going up and getting these routine catches, but also making plays and being a guy that can go and make a difference. And he kind of set the tone for, the first half where the offense did get down the field a little bit, and, they did stall, but at least that first touchdown to me was, okay, wake up, like Kincaid is here and he's, capable of doing these things. So I liked what I saw from him today. I mean, we have talked about the difference of him maybe versus Keon in this whole breakout season narrative. I don't know if he's quite there yet just based on today, but I do think that he is going to contribute a good deal to this offense.
Yeah, definitely after one day, it's not breakout time yet. It's not time to talk to pull out the breakout conversation. But I think to your point, like you said, just consistency. If he can just continue to do this, if he can continue to be a solid guy who can get open, who can find the soft spot in the zone, something that Thad had said a little bit earlier was that a lot of people try to compare him to those Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews type of guys. There was a play where he was kind of going towards the sideline, going towards the pylon, and you thought he might get in, and he was kind of reaching for it, but he fell short. And that's a type of play that you would expect a Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, one of those big, strong, powerful tight ends, to make the back of the corner end zone throw to him that he wasn't able to bring down. That's the type of play that you would expect Travis Kelce to go up and make. And that's not who Dalton Kincaid is. That's the kind of point that Thad was trying to make, is that's not who he is, and that's not who we should expect him to be, because when we do, he's never going to be that. But he can be the guy that gets open. He can be that kind of like secondary receiver, like another receiver that's just in a tight end's body. And I think that's all you really need him to be. For the other receivers, Khalil Shakir had a decent day. He had a touchdown as well, 4 receptions, 45 yards. Kind of quiet day from Joshua Palmer, only 1 target. He made a catch for 5 yards, nothing really crazy there. Keon Coleman, also a quiet day for him. So I guess I'll kind of bring that into our next point of just looking at this offense in general. It wasn't a big day from Josh Allen. It wasn't a big day from really any of the receivers other than Dalton Kincaid, like we just talked about. Is there any concern? There were a couple 3-and-outs today. It felt like they were slow at points. Is there any concern that you have right now with this offense?
Not really. I mean, this is an offense that everybody knows what they're capable of doing. And, today wasn't their greatest performance as a whole, but also, I mean, you said this earlier, they still put up 31 points. They still, Josh Allen, 215 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's not the textbook, I guess, great day that Bills fans are expected to see from their team, especially when you're playing a team like the Miami Dolphins, where you think that the Bills are going to walk into their stadium and just go up 30 points, and that's the day it's going to be. But I mean, I'm really not concerned with the lack of production in certain areas, because you mentioned this earlier, when one receiver is having a good day, or one pass catcher rather, I mean, someone else isn't, but there's always someone to make up for that. And I think we see that in the run game as well. James Cook is always someone they can kind of fall back on. So for me, I'm not that concerned with the lack of production today. And I don't even know if I would call it a lack of production, just maybe the standard, not what we would expect to see out of a team playing an 0-2 Miami Dolphins team.
I agree. I'm not overly concerned about it. I will say, putting up 31 points, it's still a lot of points, but this is a Miami defense that got scored 33 points on by the Indianapolis Colts. And you would expect the Colts offense to not be nearly as good as this Bills offense. Now, granted, I think the Dolphins have definitely evolved a little bit in these past 3 weeks. If you go back and you look at how they performed both on offense and defense in week 1 and even last week against the Patriots, it's bad. It's really bad. But if you look at them today, obviously I think Buffalo was just a little down as well, but Miami really stepped up and their offense looked a lot better. Their defense looked a lot better. So I think you have to take that into account as well. But looking at from the offensive side, now going to the defensive side, because me personally, I have more concerns on the defensive side. There were times where this team, and again, I know I just said that they are looking better, but this is still, they have weapons. Miami's got a lot of weapons and they've got a lot of quick guys, but this is still a team that just shouldn't be that great. And, Buffalo, they made the plays that they needed to make when it happened. The turnover at the end of the game, that's the play that you need to make to win the game. But I feel like they're getting really, really close to that breaking point when you look at the bend, don't break analogy. We've been saying that kind of all season so far. In the Baltimore game, it was bend, don't break. Derrick Henry's running all over you, but you get the punch out at the end and you end up winning the game. Bend, don't break. And they're continuing to do that, but they're getting dangerously close to breaking. There were some drives that Miami had where it just looked like they could do anything and everything that they wanted to. They could run the ball if they wanted. They could pass the ball. The cornerbacks, the secondary just looked absolutely terrible. Like there were plays where you're like, how is Jalen Waddle this open? I get that Mike McDaniel is a good coach and that he should be able to scheme these guys open, but how is he that open? And I had similar feelings with Zay Flowers in Baltimore. Like it just felt like, why are the receivers so open?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this before. It feels like how much bending can you do before you break? And for me today, the defense was really teetering that bending. And it was especially, I think, in the secondary. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of where it's highlighted because you see these routes, these receivers getting separation or these DBs losing their man. And that's what stands out to you. But especially in the bending, not breaking aspect of things, for me was on the third down defense. I believe Miami converted 10 of 15 third downs. They converted a fourth down. And I mean, it wasn't like we were seeing it was 3rd and 1 and they, got the extra yard and they were good. It was like 3rd and 8 and they're getting an extra, 10 yards after the first down. And for me, it's concerning because we saw this in week 1 where we said, they were bending, but they didn't break it against the Ravens. But they didn't make adjustments fast enough for me in that week 1 game for me to sit here and be like, okay, I'm not that concerned, because I was a little bit concerned coming out of it. Last week redeemed themselves a little bit, although the Jets offense, like we kind of talked about, Garrett Wilson is really their one and only threat in that, and he didn't do much. So to me, today it was really teetering that bending, and especially on that third down D. I mean, it seemed like the secondary was just playing catch up the whole game, and especially Trey White, and we can talk about him too, but it just felt like they were one step behind and kind of just not making those adjustments. And that's the concern for me, is that it shouldn't, at least to me, should not take that long in the game for them to make these adjustments, especially when it's a Miami offense. Now, maybe we didn't give Miami enough credit, before this and making predictions and talking about what they're capable of. But to me, they're not making those adjustments quick enough for me to say I don't have concern. I think I do have concern about where this defense is at.
And you mentioned Trey White. Trey White did not have a good day. Obviously he's coming off of injury, he's getting older, but he was kind of brought in as a guy who originally was supposed to be like a 3rd or 4th cornerback on the depth chart, and then after some injuries to rookie Maxwell Hairston, he kind of got hoisted into that cornerback 2 spot, and he looked like he was going to do great in the preseason. He looked great in training camp. Then he gets hurt. You don't really know what he's going to do. He's not out there against Baltimore. And then against the Jets, it's okay. He looked fine against the Jets, but it's the Jets. They've got Garrett Wilson and who? This is a completely different wide receiver group that he went up against today. And he looked a step behind, but then to the point, this is a really fast wide receiver group where if everyone was healthy, you would hope that Maxwell Harrison was out there instead of Trey White. But he looks behind, he looks a step slow, and whether that's old age or past injuries, whatever that is, I still think he can be a good cornerback, but there were some tough things there. Real quick, I want to touch on Matt Prater. He had a decent day, except for one kick. Still, he hadn't missed a kick until this one. It was a field goal at the end of the second quarter. Could have put Buffalo up 7-17, and it was a 39-yard missed field goal. He redeemed himself by hitting a 48-yard field goal, I believe, at the very end of the game, and that one once again put them up to 10 points. But any concern level there? We've talked a little bit about Matt Prater, Tyler Bass. Where do you go? What are the steps there? What are your thoughts on that currently?
I'm not concerned. It's one field goal. I mean, it was not a great miss. I mean, it was a bad miss.
It was bad. It was way left.
It was way left, and it was only a 39-yarder. I mean, it is what it is. But I'm not concerned. I mean, he, like you said, he redeemed himself on the later kick that ended up, helping the Bills take the lead. I mean, as far as the Tyler Bass conversation, I don't think his day or Prater's day today really has an effect on the Tyler Bass conversation. I know we said, maybe there's a chance, well, at least I said, maybe there's a chance that Tyler Bass does not suit up as a Bill again because Prater can come in here and do this. Maybe a little bit kind of taken aback of just Prater, he still misses. He's not this gonna go 10 for 10 and just make all of his kicks. But I think for now, where I stand is Tyler Bass, I think, is still okay with his injury. I don't think him coming back is gonna, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see, but I'm not concerned about Prater's performance today as far as Tyler Bass still being injured.
Yeah, I agree. If I had to pick one, it would still be Tyler Bass. I think Prater still has time to impress us. I think that kick was bad. Like you said, it was way left. It wasn't just when you just hit the upright, or it's just a little by a foot or so, you're like, oh, that's a close miss, we're okay. But miss like that scares you. But then he went and he kind of redeemed himself, like we said, a big field goal at the end that kind of put the game out of reach. And obviously he still has that one against Baltimore. So, all right, well, that's all we have for tonight. Thank you very much for watching us, joining us, talking with us. I am Caleb Carr, Rachel Liber, for Thad Brown, Josh Reed, and Carl Jones. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.
One of the best offensive lines.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.